Hello, Ashley.
How you doing?
Very good.
Okay, good. The thing that makes me so impressed with your show is that you publish multiple times a week, 3 times a week, and also are breaking seminal news pretty regularly. And I really want to know how you do that.
Yeah, being a deadbeat dad deserved a rebrand, and I'm here to deliver that. No, it is my second child. I have a 6-year-old whose birthday is today. These are real things I'm skipping to talk to Ashley. It's something I'm obsessed with, the show, and the premise that we have lived in this online desert of sports journalism, and that could be fun to do, to try and like run a race that few other people are running for various reasons, one of them being degree of difficulty, one of them being the resources required, another one being that metrically, maybe on its face, it's not totally sensible to try to do all the things that you said. But to me, the through line I love the phrase always on, because it is both a pejorative description of my personality and also an actual industry term of art. And the through line is, if you can do journalism in a way that feels like you're talking with your friends, and to talk to your friends in this era, it means you must always be talking to your friends and being yourself, then I think there's a way to do all of this, and it just requires you to love not to be corny, but like to love the making of this, like the reporting of it, so much that the part that is often the most fun isn't even the thing that you see in a cool video, hopefully. It's the thing that you're doing when you're like making these calls and scratching journalistic itches.
So operationally, like how many people on your team? What does the nuts and bolts of this look like?
Yeah, so look, there's a version of this show where I'm making a lot more money personally. But we wanted to build a newsroom, or our version of a newsroom. And so we have a total, this is a video and audio one-to-one product, which is, I think, terrifying to all of my public radio friends because we fetishize being audio first. But we're also making it so that if you're watching on a television, which is how I think like more than a third of our audience is watching, like on a physical television in their home, you're not noticing that, oh wow, this is like a public radio thing. And so I say all of that as a long prelude to say we have a video staff, an audio staff, and a bunch of people who do multiple things, including report. And so we're talking about 10 people, a half dozen full-timers, and we're operating like I like to think that we're a newsroom. We're also kind of cosplaying as something that punches above our weight.
Do you actually call them the Scoop Troop?
We've been working. If you guys want to text Ashley like names for what our fandom could be, the Scoop Troop is up there. Narc Nation has been negatively reviewed by our staff, but genuinely the idea that we're here to tell people stuff that they didn't know before, stuff that could maybe even go viral on the internet, while also fetishizing this truly like full-length documentary style treatment for our deep dive episodes. We're trying to be many things to many people, and maybe you only know that if you subscribe on every platform, because if you're just watching on TikTok or getting our newsletter or, God forbid, on X, the everything app, you're getting a very distinct version.
Do you upload the videos to X?
Yeah.
How does that do?
It feels like living in a sewer, but it works. We are looking to get, another term I love is funnel, because it makes me feel like I'm one of those like monkeys trying to beg a scientist for pellets. Please just like pour them into this funnel. We want audience wherever we can get it. And so, yeah, disturbingly, and I don't know if anybody here can fact check the X metrics, seems like it's really working in the way that I think they want us to think. So that's good.
So how many reporters do you have on staff?
So full-time, we have 0. But part-time, meaning me who also edits the show and also is hosting the show, I'm there spending a deep amount of my life doing that. And then we have 2 other people, really, who are also producers, but legitimately I would say, de facto full-time reporters. And then, if you see some of our episodes, we will hire freelancers to be correspondents. And that's how we get to dose out like the docket of a show, is we're looking 3 months in advance and giving runway to, and I love and hate the category that we get to indulge, which is freelance magazine reporter. Like, we have a format where people who used to write for magazines and report these great features don't have other places to do it anymore. And we get to put them inside of a format that I will cornily remind everybody is called a talkumentary, which is to say, I kind of stole what the New York Times Daily and This American Life have long done, which is a one-to-one conversation with docu-style elements, scoring, editing, music, pacing, reporting. And in that way, I can get a writer who hasn't really done that into a format in which they get to tell me a story. And so we rely on them in sort of like a piecemeal sort of approach.
But the key difference is that you're doing this all on video too.
Yes.
So I think that is one of the feats that you've pulled off, is that you have found a way to make investigative journalism interesting on video. What's your secret?
I think in retrospect, of course it is obvious that video goes viral and audio doesn't. But I didn't know that until, and I'll credit former PTFO guest and current head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers and former podcaster JJ Redick, who walked into this business and was like, so audio doesn't go viral. And I was like, oh shit. You just summarized the big issue for our industry in 3 seconds. And so leaning into video, what it does is, it's not so much a secret as it is a requirement of what you need to do this without torturing yourself in a medieval rack of post-production. So like, my background is started at Sports Illustrated, ESPN, magazine writer, fact checker. ESPN hires me, I become and remain a gas bag. And that just means that like talking on camera semi-fluently is something that I can do enough such that my producers would yell at me like, you taped way too long today. And I will say, but we got what we needed, and we will cut it down. And I don't know if that answers your question at all, but the secret is just people love to see journalism happen in front of them, even if they never realized it. So, not to keep on gas bagging, but like the whole thing that we discovered, I think, is, and this is where YouTube was illustrative, right? So there's this genre of YouTube video called the unboxing video. I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Ryan's Toys and the unboxing genre and how he makes more money than like an NBA player, basically. So the thing was, okay, there's this kid who opens up gifts on camera, and it's spontaneous and it's authentic, and you get to sort of, as I was realizing what was happening here, vicariously enjoy what Ryan is enjoying. And my thought, as I was slightly stoned watching YouTube, worried about the industry, was, what if the toy was journalism? And so you put that in front of friends of mine on video, and they open up these folders, and inside of that is reporting. And that ended up being, if anything is close to a secret, it's that you could do that, and people would enjoy the process of what it is to report stuff and do journalism, which I think is unironically cool.
I mean, you literally show documents on screen.
Tax forms, LLC registrations. On paper, again, it doesn't make sense, admittedly. That seems very, very boring. And some say that it is. But I think we figured something out.
I mean, do you think video is the best format for these kind of stories?
This is water. You know, like, I don't even think about it anymore. It's doable, and it's ideal because, to me, I love the theater of the mind of audio. I will edit in audio and not watch. But in the pre-production of an episode, I am deeply involved in like, what are the visual aids we're going to use? What are the documents? What do they say? And the virality of how to make an impact on social media and how to get shared. I've long made peace with this. We used to think about our show when we were launching it, like, what if we could totally shed the burden of video because we are so audio first? That's what we wanted to do. And then after thinking about, like, what if we create like illustrations of ourselves so that we could avoid having to like do these one-to-one depictions of our mouth speaking words on video as well as audio, we just leaned into it. And I think it is the best way to do it.
So we're at the business summit. Journalism notoriously difficult to make money on. The Washington Post previously reported that your show was, quote unquote, on the verge of profitability.
Love being on the verge of profitability. It's almost as good as being very, very rich.
Have you crossed the threshold yet? Do you know?
Yes. Look, this past year has been wild in terms of the growth of the show. And I will admit that I'm a terrible person to talk about business because part of my mental health challenge, and I say this only semi-tongue-in-cheekly, is to be able to pick stories not based on what our audience or the metrics are demanding, but rather like what I think is interesting. I think the show only works if I'm authentically like, I hate that adverb now because it is a term of art as well, but as long as I am genuinely obsessed with finding something out, am I actually curious about this thing? So yeah, things are going great, but we're also trying to, employ people, and so I don't take any of that for granted.
I mean, you work with the New York Times and The Athletic. They do your distribution. Meadowlark produces your show.
Yep.
Given that you are not selling the ads, but just curious, do you get the sense that advertisers are squeamish around any of this content? Again, this is sort of a thing that plagues journalism, is that advertisers don't always want to be next to it.
Yeah, I think sports is an amazing layer of cheese to melt on the broccoli of journalism. That is how I think about it. I love sports so much, and I love it so much that it makes me want to hold the people who compromise its integrity to account. And that could be squeamish, to your point. But it's also fun. And so my theory of all of this is, if sports, as we look around at the media industry writ large, like if sports is the only thing that's like even vaguely monocultural and growing and able to be the big tent that's left in American life, you can have all of the people making compromises editorially and financially and in terms of their morality, frankly, and that's a lot easier to advertise. But I think there's probably room for the person who is presenting to their audience something that resembles a fidelity to a rigorous pursuit of truth, if not always the truth itself, because God knows I'm not promising. The show isn't called Pablo Torre is Right. The show is I'm finding out stuff, I'm reporting. I'm not saying democracy dies in darkness, but I am saying it's a lot more fun when journalism can exist. And so how do you get people to care about it? Maybe you do it through games and these characters. So I find that there are certainly some squeamish advertisers, but I am hopeful and heartened that people also realize that sports has this ability to be categorically fun, and we use that to our advantage.
If athletes can go directly to audiences with their own documentaries or their own podcasts, what leverage does that give sports journalists or even commentators? I mean, do these athletes even want to come on these shows and talk about things?
Largely, no. Part of the reason my show is the way it is because we're not a show that fetishizes guest booking. We have art, by the way, and if you're a guest on our show, we fetishize you. We love that you agreed to go on it. But in general, we're not reverse engineering who are the biggest names or the biggest audiences, and let's just use them as like these footholds to climb the rock wall of content. Like what we're doing really is saying, I think a big market inefficiency when it comes to athletes telling their stories has been that, and this is true of celebrity, I think, and music and culture in general, the subject doesn't always know what's most interesting about them. And so you need sort of an outside perspective, hopefully one with like a rigorous, desire to tell something true, to present that. And so our thing is always like, was this a good story? Did you laugh? Did you think? Did the person who participated in it come off in a way that was nourishing, but also kind of like dessert? And by all means, like there are some people on our show who we've interviewed who didn't love the experience. And I always want to tell the people, if you are considering being a guest on our show, there are shows where we celebrate people that we have truly decided to embrace because they rule in one way or another. And there are also people who we're there to do reporting on. And so we try to contain multitudes in that way also.
I'm curious because some of your work relies on anonymous sources. I think in some of your episodes you've talked about you get a lot of tips now.
Yeah.
Do you find that sources trust you more as an independent voice or as someone when you were at ESPN, for example, or Sports Illustrated?
They started trusting me once I started breaking stories that resonated with them and with an audience in general. I do think that independence is very helpful in sports for this reason, to your question, though, because there are lots of very big macroeconomic conflicts of interest that are really implausible to navigate as we sink further and further into the larger sewer of how money is made in the United States. And so we don't have any fidelity to the leagues or business partners that are otherwise looking to control what our content says. And so, by the way, the New York Times and The Athletic, they have been amazing partners insofar as they are also an independent journalistic entity. But we are also, inside of this like nesting doll or this network, we're also independent from them. And so I would say that we have the ability to call the shots and to say things in a way that might be different from the Times, but we're also aspiring to a standard that would, I think, make any journalism nerd happy. And so I'm grateful that the Times and The Athletic has expressed that as their view of my show, while also saying, like, Pablo's also trying stuff that we're not gonna try. And we can get into I'm always happy to nerd out on anonymous sources and journalism in general. That's probably not the panel anybody wants to listen to right now. But I do think that being plausibly independent and unconflicted has been an enormous advantage. And once you show that you don't need a giant institution to get distribution, owing to the whole like JJ Redick-ism of video going viral, then you can trust me to also deliver the story to enough people to make impact. And that's been the big revelation that's changed, the size of our inbox.
I mean, I did think it was interesting that Steve Ballmer went on ESPN to address your story and your reporting that you've been doing on him, rather than coming on your show. I wasn't sure what to make of that, but.
I'm bummed about that, Steve, I call him Steve as if he has ever had a conversation with me, which I think, to your point, he has not. But Steve Ballmer, we requested comment from, well in advance of the story. Every episode we do, Aspiration is now, I think, 8 parts in this pseudo, true crime kind of style. Our ongoing investigation of the Clippers and Aspiration in the NBA. They get a heads up for fact-checking and for requests for comment before every episode, and they've never deigned to talk to me. But it was deeply enjoyable to have our first episode come out and to see a guy who at that point had, I don't know where Microsoft stock is right now, but at that point had $150 billion, making time the next day to go to, I think, what he felt like was more of a comfort zone on ESPN to answer questions. And that interview, by the way, insofar as I can only hold someone to account based on what they've said and documented and filed in civil court, perhaps, in the state of California, as the latest episode of our show indicated, we can only hold people to account on what they have said. And so I'm very grateful that he did that interview with ESPN, because it comes up a lot that he went on the record anywhere.
I want to get to some audience questions, so let's try to get through. There's a lot, and they're good. Okay. So, with all of your insider info on sports, what's your take on sports betting? And are you using your info to place your own bets?
The prediction markets have really opened the opportunity for me to traffic in all sorts of absurd, micro prop bets. No, I'm not. I'm not a sports gambler. I'm not a prediction markets event contract holder. Is that what we're saying that is now? The CFTC, I think, has declared it so. I'm not. I do think it's fascinating, though, that sports is in this place where the thing that made it so popular and important is competitive integrity. And there are all these opportunities now, and I'm not saying these should be illegal by any means. I think they should be federally regulated by regulatory agencies that are interested in regulation, specifically. I would say that sports is, though, running the risk of taking the money on the table and basically cashing in on a reputation for, integrity. And so I'm worried about that, and we cover these topics, obviously, on the show.
Well, we should note you were formerly sponsored by DraftKings. I guess one thing I've wondered about is so much of sports media now is centered around gambling content. Do you think this is a momentary thing, like this is the money on the table, or do you think this is a fundamental reshaping of sports media?
I think it's the money on the table, and the expiration date on that money is subject to the event contracts I was referencing before. Look, it's no secret. I saw it from the inside. And by the way, I've worked at ESPN, continued to do freelance work for ESPN for 13 years. And so suckling at the teat of the cable television bundle was so great. It was the ability to fund loss leaders in journalism at a place like ESPN. And they had a wall between business and journalism, and a lot of good work was done journalistically. That goes away, or that is eroding into something like dust. And so who comes along but, yeah, the betting companies, the legal gambling operators. And so right now there is money, and I am glad that they are funding media. I just think that we need to talk about the transaction and the dynamic like adults as well. Like someone should be doing that, as much as we also are glad that they're paying for the jobs of lots of my friends.
Can you talk about the details of your New York Times distribution deal? Kara was on stage earlier. She owns her IP. So are there any guarantees for you, like minimum guarantees? Do you have an equity stake? Can you leave when the deal is up and go to the highest bidder?
Yeah. So in reverse order, can I leave when the deal is up and go to the highest bidder? Yes. We own our IP. Me and Meadowlark Media, which was founded by the former president of ESPN, John Skipper, and Dan Lebitard, another gas bag on ESPN, who's also a great friend of mine. We co-own the show together. There is a minimum guarantee. I believe it was reported in Bloomberg, some of the rough details. How dare you report on my finances, Ashley? I'm really here to confront you.
You can confirm them on the record.
No, a seven-figure deal is right. And so, look, we have a minimum guarantee that we are trying to out-earn, obviously, with various revenue share dynamics built into that. And we're very happy. I love that the Times is, I love that they take interest in what I am doing, which is to say, like, trying to do journalism while recognizing that in this creator I hate being a creator as a label. A lot of my complaints are about vocabulary, it turns out. Creator is a word that I'm still not comfortable with, but the idea that there is room for a person, a personality who cares about journalism in a network that's very old school, run by these monks of journalism at the Times, I genuinely find that endearing as a subscriber to the New York Times. So yes, we have the ability to go elsewhere, but I really like how it's going so far.
Going back to just your approach to video and this idea that you want video to go viral, is your hope that people will find you through video, but that they trickle down into the audio, or are you happy to just keep them in video?
Wherever they want to subscribe. I have really come to some sort of peace with the idea that if you are someone who loves your podcast app, you don't want to necessarily go over to YouTube, and vice versa. I remember at Sports Illustrated, brief story, there was this dystopian meeting I was in where it was like, we've put at the bottom of every page of Sports Illustrated, the print product, for more on this story, go to si.com/bonus. And we had this meeting, and it was like, all right, how many people went to si.com/bonus? And 0 people went to si.com/bonus. And it's like, you're on one thing, you don't want to go to the other thing. So we're just going to find you wherever you are and hopefully make you really into what we're doing.
Someone wanted to know about how you handle legal review.
Yeah. We have a lawyer who I spend a lot of time with now. And our legal department, to be clear, is our lawyer. And he sits in on recordings that are particularly sensitive. He is giving us notes before we go to publish it. We are extraordinarily and boringly careful behind the scenes because part of the fun tightrope of me and Steve Ballmer and any of the other billionaires who we report on our show is that we can be obliterated by legal fees if they have grounds to sue us. And I'm very glad, at the risk of tempting the only person who's threatened to sue us, who happens to be Bill Belichick's girlfriend, Jordan Hudson, at the risk of drawing her out, we have not yet been sued. And I expect that we will at some point, but we're trying to pick the right battles and strategize very preemptively around what kind of a risk we're taking. And I'm very glad that as fact-checking and legal diligence goes. We have a clean sheet. Again, not that the title of the show is Pablo Torre Will Not Get Sued, but we are trying to get it right.
We've talked a lot about kind of this idea of institutions versus independence, and I'm just curious on kind of looking far ahead. Is the ultimate goal to build an institution around yourself?
Yeah. As I contemplate, will I see my daughter on her 6th birthday? I would like there to be more infrastructure around me. But to be serious about it, I don't know. I mean, I look at somebody like my good friend Bill Simmons, and I wonder, like, do I want to start my own version of what Grantland was or The Ringer was? And I don't think like that, frankly. But I do want to continue to fund journalism. Again, not to lapse into a slogan at the Washington Post or anything, but I do think that if we can do that, we're not only fulfilling a market that has been unfulfilled, but we're also helping do something that I care about, which is feed people who are starving for something like rigor in their reporting, while also taste testing the best athlete weed brands, which is an episode we also did separately. We do try to contain multitudes to have fun and also give you the vegetables.
Well, that's our time, Pablo, but this was a fantastic conversation, so thank you so much for coming out on your daughter's birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.